Hi, YouTube. Moms Against Medical Bullying. I wanted to continue my reading on the book Jenner and Vaccination by Dr. Charles Creighton, written in 1889. When it comes to vaccines, I like to, I'm wanting to read stuff, from a long time ago because, it's like this thing is gotten so inflated that I always like to get to the bottom line, like what's the root? What is the root of this monster, that this thing that has grown to be such a Goliath. So anyway, I just wanted to read a little bit in chapter 6. Chapter 6 is titled the variolous test, and he goes into detail about how they tested out to see if this cow pus prevent the smallpox. So they did it by inoculating somebody with cow pus, and then not long after inoculating them with smallpox matter or pus. So my question would be that is the actual end result of the disease itself? So here we go. I'm just going to read this. The one great question which the profession had to satisfy themselves upon after a stock of cowpox matter had been found by Woodville and distributed by Pearson was whether vaccine inoculation warded off smallpox. There were other points supposed to be at issue, such as whether vaccine caused an eruption, whether vaccine inoculation spread contagion, and whether the operation was attended with risk to life. But the main question was whether it answered the purpose that Jenner recommended it for. There were two ways of getting an answer to the question: the way of experiment and the way of experience. Experience was, of course, the best test, but it was not usually the quickest. The profession wanted to know the value of the new protective as soon as possible, and they proceeded to test their first cowpox cases by inoculating them soon after with smallpox. That was the famous variolous test. No one seems to have discussed the validity of the variolous test as a proof of the protective power of cowpox for practical purposes. Jenner resorted to it as if it were a matter of course to do so, and his example was implicitly followed. The principle of testing the force of one inoculation by means of a second was part of the current inoculation doctrine of the time. Men of the stamp of Daniel Sutton were accustomed to reassure their clients that they were safe by showing them that a second or third or fourth inoculation produced either no smallpox at all or a less amount of smallpox than the first inoculation. The assurance given on these experimental grounds proved not unfrequently to be fallacious. When the real trial came, it was not unusual for the inoculated to take the epidemic disorder just like their unprotected neighbors. There was no lack of sobering experience of that kind, so meaning that happened quite often. Just like today, in the outbreaks, most of them are vaccinated. There was no lack of sobering experience of that kind, so that in Paris, the inoculators lost credit, and in a course of time, almost ceased to find employment. Sounds like the people in Paris are pretty smart. After describing in a letter to a friend his first case of cowpoxing, which was James Phipps in 1796, Jenner goes on to say, But now listen to the most delightful part of my story. The boy since been inoculated for the smallpox. The boy has since been inoculated for the smallpox, which, as I venture to predict, produced no effect. He was tried again a few months after, when no effects were produced on the Constitution. Poor Phipps, as Jenner used to call him, was inoculated some 20 times after that and never took. He was Jenner's showcase of resistance to smallpox. He was a poor, consumptive, or scrofulous youth with his lymphatic glands so clogged after the cowpox, in parentheses, that any subsequent inoculation of virus on the arm had no chance of being absorbed. The Inquiry, which was the paper that Jenner wrote, the Inquiry was like the main medical journal, something like that. I stopped reading this for a while and I'm picking it back up. So the Inquiry contained only 2 or at most 3 other variolous tests done on vaccinated children. Jenner rushed off to London to get it printed without waiting to apply the test himself. But his assistant applied it in 2 or perhaps 3 of the cases. Even careless readers could hardly have been satisfied with the evidence so far that the vaccinated were forever after secure from the infection of the smallpox, as Jenner boldly alleged. When he went back to the country after launching his discovery, he applied the test to one other vaccinated child and produced the local pustule, the eruptive fever, and a transient eruption on the wrist. Jenner did not inoculate his Stonehouse cases in December 1798 with smallpox, but the Stroud doctors put all their 10 cases religiously through the test, with the singular result that the only one of the 10, an adult whose vaccination had not held, was the only one who stood the test, while the other 9 all had smallpox in one degree or another, in the usual inoculated form. The 2 who had the worst vaccinal ulcers having stood the test rather better than the others. By way of control upon Jenner, the independent evidence from Stroud was not encouraging. The next evidence was that which Woodville's continuous series of cases enabled him to supply on the grand scale. He carried on his vaccinations at the old inoculation hospital in an atmosphere of smallpox contagion, so that cowpox had a great opportunity of showing its protective power. Jenner had hastened to advise Woodville to inoculate those patients with smallpox who might resist the action of the cowpox matter. And Woodville did inoculate several a few days after they had been vaccinated. Even those who did not resist the action of cowpox, but on the other hand, developed full and correct vesicles, acquired the smallpox also, either by inoculation or by contagion. Thus, Anne Bumpus, from whose vaccine vesicles Jenner's own stock of lymph was procured, sickened for natural smallpox on the 10th day from her vaccination and had 310 pustules of that disease on the 15th day. Her immediate vaccinifer, but one, Jane Collingridge, was inoculated with smallpox on the 5th day after vaccination and had an eruption of 100 to 200 variolous pustules. These experiences were frequent in the first weeks of Woodville's practice with cowpox in the atmosphere of the smallpox hospital. Woodville was so sure of the protective power of cowpox that he tried to explain the eruptions in every way but the right one. I did not conceive it to be possible, he wrote, till after I had made repeated trials of the new inoculation out of the hospital. Nor is the fact to be easily explained. At length, it was admitted that cowpox did not prevent smallpox if both infections were received together or if the cowpox had no more than a few days' start. The protection from smallpox was only established in the system when cowpox had run its course and produced its full constitutional action. The system was supposed to have been, as it were, touched profoundly by the virus of cowpox and to have been rendered insensible to the action of smallpox forever after. No one was able to explain how an infection that was so unlike in kind to smallpox as to run its full course while the latter ran its full course also, could become an antagonistic influence in the years succeeding, when nothing remained of it but a scar. Indeed, the prophylaxis was candidly acknowledged, as we shall see, by those who thought about it at all, to be of the nature of a mystery. Woodville put all his cases through a variolous test shortly after the cowpox infection was over, including even the large number of his cases who had gone through the smallpox itself concurrently with the cowpox. They all stood the test equally, and these cases, to the number of several hundred, formed the nucleus of the great body of English variolous tests, which the Germans and others were fond of adducing as a grand total of evidence behind which it was unnecessary for most doctors to go. Pearson also wrote that he had inoculated many scores with smallpox matter after the vaccine disease, and never with the effect of exciting the smallpox. He adds, however, I have indeed been desired to see even some of my own patients who I was acquainted had taken the smallpox. But these cases turned out to be either those in which the cowpox had not in reality proceeded, or they were cases of merely local infection from the inoculated smallpox. Jenner's friend, Marshall of Eastington, wrote that he had tested 211 of his total of 423, but found that everyone was protected. This is the same Marshall who declared that 127 out of his total of 423 were vaccinated with lymph of his own raising. Evidence from various parts of the country soon began to appear in the medical journals. Evans of Ketley, near Shifnal, had vaccinated successfully 68 persons, of whom 39 had vaccinal eruptions, and several had troublesome ulcers. Of these, he tested 12 with smallpox and found that they resisted it. So 12 of the 68. Even when the vaccinated did not resist the smallpox inoculation, it was not thought of much account. M. Ward, surgeon to the Manchester Infirmary, sent the following series of cases and congratulated mankind on the success of cowpox. Case 1, April 16th, girl, 7 years old. Now, all his cases are like babies and little children. Successful vaccination, oblong vesicle on the 13th day, full of lymphoid fluid and surrounded by areola, was thereafter inoculated with smallpox and had the disease in confluent form. 1600 to 1800 pustules. Case 2, infant age 9 months, brother of number 1, successful vaccination at 2 points. One healed on the 15th day, other covered by crust, which became a superficial ulcer after the 21st day and yielded ichor up to the 32nd day. Caught the smallpox from his sister and had about 50 pustules, mostly on his face, which began to show about the 35th day from his vaccination. So case number 2 caught smallpox off case number 1, who was inoculated with the smallpox. Case number 3, age 5 months old, vaccination did not hold, and variolation did not hold. Case number 4, age 5 years old, did not take the vaccine and did not take smallpox after 2 trials by inoculation. Case 5, age 9 months, did not take vaccine, did not take smallpox twice. Case 6, age 3 years old, did not take the vaccine, and they did not take the vaccine. And variolation had failed beyond local inflammation when tried 4 months before. Case number 7, age 5 months old, vaccination failed, though tried twice. Variolation failed, but arm swelled. Case 8, 16 months old, successful vaccination, areola on the 11th day, very extensive, with much fever. Variolated on the 29th day without result. Case number 9, age 19 weeks, successful vaccination, vaccinal eruption on the arm, variolated on the 12th day, local pustule on the 19th day, eruption of 30 pustules on the 22nd day. And case 10, age 14 weeks, inoculated from case 1, evidently with the coexistent smallpox matter mistaken for cowpox. So the girl, the first case that got smallpox after she was inoculated with it, they didn't take from her cowpox pustule because they were doing arm to arm, I guess. They mistakenly took from her smallpox eruption. So this kid was sickened on the 7th day, eruption of smallpox on 10th day, full burden on 12th, but not confluent. Variolated on the 14th day without result. And the next case 11, age 9 months old, also inoculated from case 1, complicated with smallpox, with the same result as case 10. Case 12, 13, and 14 results are not known. Board was highly pleased with this record of variolous tests. What are we to think of the temper of the profession at this time when a respectable practitioner congratulates the world upon a great discovery with failure staring him in the face from the record of his own experience? Only one of all his cases resisted variolation after being cowpoxed, namely case 7. 3 cases took smallpox in the clearest way after being cowpoxed. 4 cases resisted vaccination and then likewise resisted variolation, and 1 case resisted vaccination and received the subsequent variolous infection. And 2 cases were apparently variolated in the first instance by misadventure. Some practitioners were shaken in their faith when the variolous test failed. One of these, Shorter of Bloxham, near Banbury, wrote to Jenner that he had succeeded in producing the correct variolous pustule at the place of insertion in recently vaccinated cases, but Jenner's gentlemanlike letter removed all my doubts, and I have again resumed the practice. I'm going to stop there for now. It's very long, and I don't even know if anybody will listen to this video or anything, but what I really want to do is just put a voice to these words, because this book is out there, and I just wanted to put it out there again on the internet. I'm going to continue to read more, and then I'll post again the more I read. So maybe next time I'll just do highlighted, but I don't know, it's kind of important to read all of it because the way that they talk in this time, it's like you kind of have to read the whole thing in order to like get a good context of what certain words they're saying mean, because obviously in 1889 or whatever, the language is different than today. So, and especially in Europe at that. So what's interesting is that the things that this man discusses in this book from 1889 seem to be the same exact issues of today. And what confuses me is if this variolous test, obviously, you know, these kids, and it was done to kids too at the same time, which I think is disgusting, but like, they see that these results are not coming out that great. But yet, how was vaccination able to continue on and on? So even today, we see that the vaccinated outbreaks are happening, poor health is happening, you know, poor everything, just poor health in general, poor neurological well-being, and we're still carrying on with this practice. I mean, to me, it's just crazy, and I wish that it would just go away, because vaccination just causes harm, and health doesn't come through a needle. It doesn't come through aluminum and dead virus and animal DNA. And it just, in my mind, it doesn't even make sense, you know? So and it just seems too that Jenner just kept making excuses for why his invention was not, you know, producing the results that he touted. You know, so I just want to really understand what is behind this whole idea of vaccination. Who is behind it? Because why is it when any doctor says anything negative about vaccination, they are immediately dealt with? I don't understand that. So that's not very scientific. If it were scientific, the doctor wouldn't be outed. They would, you know, that wouldn't be the way that people are only outed when there's something to cover up, you know, like they don't want certain things exposed, so they're going to out people, they're going to outcast them, you know, just to save their butts. So I believe that the only way for the vaccination kingdom to crumble is by parents just simply telling other parents, you know, just the old fashioned way, through conversation, through telling people face to face, you know, through grassroots. And then more people know, they research it for themselves, then they stop vaccinating or whatever. They don't vaccinate their kids, they tell their friends, and so on and so forth. And the less people vaccinate, the more that industry will fall and it will crumble, because the people, you know, our population holds the power. The more we participate in things, the bigger the corporation, or the bigger that thing will get, the more the people give it power and, you know, give it business. So I just believe that regular people like you, like me, are the people that are going to inform other people through natural ways. I don't see much hope in going through, you know, senators and, you know, although it's good to keep our laws in order to maintain our rights to be exempt from vaccination. That is very important. But what I mean is that we're not going to, I don't think that we are going to ban vaccines by law by going through our senators, because it's just too, I feel like it's just too powerful of an industry and a force, and they have too much money and too much power. So, and those little senators and legislative people, I don't foresee them being bold enough to do that kind of thing. I think the normal people, we all hold the power in our population to inform one another and then pass the word. And then over time, the industry will crumble. So that's what I think.